Derek Chauvin's case is one of the most high-profile exemplifications of police violence and misbehavior in recent memory. The issue featured the death of George Floyd, an unarmed black man, at the hands of Chauvin, a white Minneapolis police officer. The mugged event provoked civil demonstrations and public debate about police reform and ethical justice. In this video, we will examine the case in depth, including its literal background, the circumstances leading up to Floyd's murder, Chauvin's trial, and the verdict's ramifications for police in the United States. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, who was set up shamefaced of murder in the death of George Floyd, was captured on body cam videotape using excessive force against a woman and a teenager in 2017. The disturbing video shows Chauvin kneeling on the woman's neck for several twinkles while she was shackled and lying on the ground, constantly telling him that she couldn't breathe. Also, Chauvin can be seen cascading the teenager to the floor with his knee, while the teenager is also shackled and lying on his stomach. Both individuals were arrested on dubitation of unruly conduct. The event led to the megacity of Minneapolis agreeing to pay the lady and adolescent who sued the megacity a $27 million agreement. The case of Derek Chauvin must be understood in the climate of the long history of police brutality and misconduct in the U.S., particularly against communities of color. Black Americans have been subordinated to systemic racism and violence by law enforcement for centuries, from slavery and isolation to the moment. Police brutality and misconduct have been recreating, leading to screams and civil uneasiness in numerous large cities. The killings of Eric Garner in New York, Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, Freddie Gray in Baltimore, and Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, among other high-profile incidents of police violence and misconduct, have all passed in recent times. These incidents have reignited the discussion about police responsibility and reform, while kindling a public ethical justice movement. The death of George Floyd. On May 25th of 2020, George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man, was arrested by 4 police officers, including Derek Chauvin, outside a convenience store in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The police had been called after a store hand reported that Floyd had used a fake $20 bill to buy cigarettes. The officers approached Floyd, sitting in a car with 2 other people, and ordered him out of the vehicle. After some resistance, Floyd was shackled and led to the sidewalk, where he was projected to the ground by Chauvin. Chauvin kneeled on Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes, despite Floyd's pleas that he couldn't breathe and calls from onlookers to stop. A recording of the event was caught on camera, which was considerably circulated on social media. The footage showed Floyd's body getting limp as Chauvin pressed his neck. When paramedics came, they tried to resuscitate Floyd, but he was declared dead. The Black Lives Matter movement, which calls for an end to ethical injustice and police violence, was sparked by Floyd's death. Calls for change in the justice system followed Floyd's death as well. The death of George Floyd sparked immediate outrage and riots in Minneapolis and across the country. Large cities held demonstrations calling for justice and police reform, and numerous descended into violence, clashes between protesters and police, sacking and property damage. 2 autopsies, one by a local government official and one by doctors working for Floyd's family, determined that his death was a homicide. Released on June 1st of 2020, they differed over whether there were contributing factors and whether the agreed cause, restraint and neck compression, was combined with subdual or asphyxiation. Al Sharpton delivered the eulogy at a public memorial held on June 4th at North Central University in Minneapolis for George Floyd. Public viewing and a family memorial were held on June 6 in Rayford, North Carolina, near Floyd's hometown. Floyd's family held a public memorial in Houston on June 8th, followed by a private service on June 9th, paid for by professional boxer Floyd Mayweather. Joe Biden privately met with the Floyd family and gave a video message at the funeral. Floyd was buried next to his mother in Pearland, Texas. The time Chauvin had his knee on Floyd's neck was commemorated widely as a moment of silence to honor Floyd and was used in chants, protest signs, and messages, as were the words, "I can't breathe." In consequence, Chauvin was charged with third-degree murder and alternate-degree manslaughter, and the Minneapolis Police Department dismissed all 4 of the officers involved in Floyd's arrest. The judgment from the jury was delivered on April 20th of 2021 after a 3-week trial that started on March 8th of 2021 for Derek Chauvin. Numerous activists and civil rights leaders called for a conviction during the trial, which enter expansive media content and garner attention on a global scale. This video will completely assay the problem, covering the execution's case, the defense points of contention, and the verdict's consequences for American policing. The execution argued that Derek Chauvin's conduct was a direct cause of George Floyd's death. They presented colorful substantiation, including videotape footage of the incident and evidence from substantiations, medical experts, and law enforcement officers. The execution argued that Chauvin's use of force was excessive and that he ignored Floyd's pleas for help, leading to his death. They substantiated that Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes, despite Floyd's repeated requests that he couldn't breathe. They also substantiated that Chauvin continued to apply pressure to Floyd's neck after he had lost knowledge. The execution called for a range of substantiations to swear, including onlookers who witnessed the incident, medical experts who bandied the cause of Floyd's death, and law enforcement officers who witnessed police use of force programs. The execution also played videotape footage of the incident, captured by an observer, and extensively participated on social media. They used it to illustrate their argument that Chauvin's conduct was excessive and unjustified. The defense argued that George Floyd's medical use and underpinning health conditions were responsible for his death rather than Chauvin's conduct. They also argued that Chauvin's use of force was justified, given the circumstances of the arrest and Floyd's resistance. The defense also called substantiations to swear, including medical experts who bandied Floyd's underpinning health conditions. These law enforcement officers witnessed police training and use of force programs, and other substantiations bandied the circumstances of the arrest. The defense also substantiated that Floyd had used medicines before his arrest and argued that this contributed to his death. The defense arguments were met with skepticism by numerous spectators who noted that Floyd's medicine use and health conditions were inapplicable to Chauvin's excessive and unjustified use of force. Derek Chauvin, a former police officer, was set up shamefaced on all 3 counts of alternate-degree murder, third-degree murder, and alternate-degree manslaughter by a Minneapolis jury on April 20th of 2021 after 2 days and around 10 hours of debate. Numerous people saluted the decision as a rare case of police officers facing the consequences for their violent crimes against people of color. The decision marked a turning point in the public dialogue on racial justice and police reform, as well as a hint that maybe the US is going towards a more just and equal society. The media considerably reported the decision, and numerous spectators bandied about how it would affect policing and the legal system. Eventually, the Derek Chauvin trial verdict was a turning point in the struggle for racial justice and police reform in the US. Indeed, if there was still necessary to be done, the decision was viewed as a step towards further responsibility for police officers who harm people of color and substantiating that the US was heading toward a more fair and indifferent society. Chauvin, 46, has been held in executive isolation at the state's maximum security captivity at Oak Park Heights. He's confined mainly to a 10 by 10 foot room, which he can leave for a regular 1 hour daily for exercise. The murder of George Floyd and the Derek Chauvin case has come to represent the fight for police reform and racial justice in the US. Many people who have fought for responsibility and change in the justice system felt relieved and vindicated after the verdict, which made Chauvin shamefaced of all charges. The decision is the first lengthy process leading to justice and equivalency. Further work must be done to break the structural problems that contributed to George Floyd's death and the many incidents of racial injustice and police brutality nationwide. The Derek Chauvin case stressed the significance of video substantiation, public opinion, demonstrations, and activism in impacting societal trends. It also emphasizes the necessity of reforming the police, stepping up responsibility, and recommitting to justice and equivalency. The Derek Chauvin case eventually memorializes the significant influence that one person's conduct can have on society and the significance of keeping individuals in positions of power responsible for their deeds.